The Galactic Council chambers on Veth Prime were built to inspire awe. The ceiling rose 300 meters above the central floor, covered in living crystal that captured and reflected the light of a dozen different suns. Representatives from over 400 species sat in tiered galleries that circled the speaking platform. This was where the galaxy conducted its business, settled its disputes, and tried to maintain some semblance of order among the stars. Ambassador Elena Vasquez had stood on this platform many times in her 20 years of service. She had negotiated trade agreements, mediated territorial disputes, and slowly built humanity's reputation as reliable partners and honest dealers. The humans were newcomers to galactic society, having made first contact only 150 years ago. In that time, they had established themselves as useful but unremarkable members of the community. They had a small defense fleet, modest colonial holdings, and a talent for commerce. Nothing special, nothing threatening. Today, Elena stood quietly as Ambassador Jakath of the Keth Dominion delivered his speech. The Keth were reptilian, standing nearly 3 meters tall with scaled skin the color of dried blood. They had conquered over 200 star systems in the past 3 centuries, absorbing smaller species into their empire through a combination of military force and economic pressure. They were not beloved, but they were feared and respected. Jakath's voice boomed through the chamber, translated instantly into hundreds of languages by the Council systems. His words were full of contempt. The human species has repeatedly interfered with Keth expansion, he declared. Their merchants undercut our prices. Their diplomats whisper poison in the ears of species that should rightfully submit to Keth protection. They have insulted our honor and challenged our rightful place in this galaxy. Elena kept her face neutral. The accusations were mostly false. Human traders had simply offered better deals. Human diplomats had simply told the truth about Keth methods. This was apparently unforgivable. Therefore, Jakath continued, his golden eyes fixed on Elena with undisguised hatred. The Dominion of Keth formally declares a state of war against the Human Confederacy. You have 30 standard cycles to surrender all colonial holdings, disband your military forces, and submit to Keth authority. Failure to comply will result in the complete annihilation of your species. A murmur ran through the council chambers. War declarations were rare. Most species preferred economic pressure or quiet annexation. The Keth were making a statement. They believed humans were weak, and they wanted everyone to watch them prove it. Elena looked around the chamber. She saw concern on some faces, satisfaction on others. A few species had always resented humanity's quick rise in galactic commerce. Many more simply didn't care. Humans were a minor power. The Keth were a major one. The outcome seemed obvious. She pulled out her communication device and sent a single message to Earth. They've chosen war. The response came back in less than a minute. Elena read it once, then twice. A small smile crossed her face. Ambassador Vasquez, the council moderator said, "Do you wish to respond to the Keth declaration?" Elena stepped forward to the speaking platform. The chamber fell silent. Everyone expected her to plead for mediation, to ask for council intervention, to beg for mercy. That was what weak species did when faced with overwhelming force. "I have received a response from Human Command," she said. Her voice was calm and clear. "I will read it in full." She held up her device and spoke the words that would echo through galactic history. "You declared war. Now we'll show you why that was a mistake." The chamber erupted. Jakath laughed, a harsh barking sound. Brave words from a species that will be extinct within the year. Elena simply nodded to the council moderator. "I believe our business here is concluded. The Human Confederacy withdraws its delegation from all council proceedings until the current conflict is resolved." She walked out of the chamber without looking back. Her aides fell in beside her, their faces pale with shock. "Ambassador," one of them whispered, "what are we going to do? The Keth have 3,000 warships. We have less than 200. Elena said nothing until they reached their shuttle. Once the doors were sealed and they were lifting off from the council platform, she finally spoke. "We have exactly what we need." Her aides looked at each other in confusion. Elena watched Veth Prime shrink in the viewport. She thought about what was coming. She thought about the price that would be paid. She thought about the message she had just delivered. For 150 years, humanity had played a role. They had smiled and traded and negotiated. They had built relationships instead of fleets. They had made themselves useful instead of feared. And all that time, they had prepared for this moment. The galaxy thought they knew humans. They were about to learn how wrong they were. 3 days later, the Keth invasion fleet launched from their staging grounds near the border. 3,000 warships, carrying 500,000 soldiers and enough firepower to crack planets. Admiral Threk commanded from the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, a massive dreadnought that served as the fleet's flagship. Threk was a veteran of a dozen conquests. He had broken the Velith Confederation in 6 months. He had crushed the Morthani Republic in 3. The humans, with their tiny fleet and soft diplomacy, would be his easiest victory yet. His target was New Helsinki, a human colony world near the border. Intelligence reports showed it defended by approximately 40 human vessels. Small frigates, mostly. A few destroyers, nothing that could stand against even a fraction of his force. "Admiral," his censor officer reported, "we will arrive at New Helsinki in 4 hours." Thivek settled back in his command chair. "Prepare landing forces. I want the colony secured within 12 hours of our arrival. Round up the population. We'll need workers for the labor camps." "Yes, Admiral." Thivek allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The humans had been arrogant. They had sent that ridiculous message as if they had any power to back it up. He would enjoy proving them wrong. He would enjoy watching their worlds burn. His thoughts were interrupted by a communication from the Keth homeworld. The High Command wanted regular updates. They wanted to watch their newest enemy crumble in real time. "Tell them we are proceeding as planned," Thvek ordered. "The humans will learn the cost of defying the Dominion." The fleet continued toward New Helsinki. 3,000 ships, 500,000 soldiers. The might of an empire that had never known defeat. They had no idea what was waiting for them. On New Helsinki, the last evacuation shuttle lifted off from the capital city. In less than 72 hours, the entire population of 8 million people had been moved. They had trained for this. Every human colony conducted regular evacuation drills. Most citizens thought they were preparing for natural disasters or industrial accidents. The truth was different. Governor Chen watched the shuttle disappear into the clouds. The city around her was silent. Power still ran through the grid. Food sat in kitchens. Personal belongings filled homes. Everything had been left behind except the people. All civilian population confirmed evacuated. Her aide reported. "Military personnel are withdrawing to the rally point now." Chen nodded. And the message? Programmed into every screen, every speaker, every communication device on the planet. It will activate the moment they arrive. Chen took one last look at the city she had governed for 15 years. She had built schools here, hospitals, parks. She had watched children grow up and start families of their own. Now she was leaving it all behind, but not forever. She believed that. She had seen the reports that most citizens never saw. She knew what humanity had been building in the darkness between stars. "Let's go," she said. Her shuttle lifted off, joining the others in the evacuation fleet. They jumped to hyperspace, disappearing from Keth sensors. When Admiral Thivek arrived 4 hours later, he found an empty world waiting for him. Empty ships, empty stations, empty cities, and a message. "You have 72 hours to withdraw. This is your only warning." Thivek read the message and laughed. The humans had run. They had abandoned their own colony rather than face his fleet. This was better than victory. This was proof of their cowardice. "Establish a command base on the surface," he ordered. "Secure the orbital stations. Send word to the homeworld. New Helsinki has fallen without a single shot fired." His officers rushed to obey. The Keth soldiers landed on a world that should have been defended, finding nothing but silence. They walked through human streets, kicked open human doors, ate human food. It was almost disappointing. Thivek spent the next 70 hours consolidating his position. He ignored the countdown on every screen. He dismissed the warning as a desperate bluff from a beaten enemy. On the 71st hour, his censor officer spoke in a voice that trembled. "Admiral, we're detecting contacts. Human ships? How many? I don't understand these readings, Admiral." Thivek strode to the sensor station and looked at the display. His blood went cold. The contacts weren't coming from hyperspace lanes. They weren't coming from any direction that made sense. They were emerging from the void itself, from the empty darkness beyond the galactic rim where no ship should be able to travel. And there were thousands of them. "That's impossible," Thvek whispered. The first human vessel completed its transition into normal space. It was enormous, dwarfing even the Eternal Dominion. Its hull was covered in weapon systems that Thek didn't recognize. More ships followed. Then more. Then more. The humans had not run. They had not abandoned their world. They had been waiting. Admiral Tivek stared at the sensor display as his certainty crumbled like dust. The contacts kept appearing. 100, 500, 1,000. They emerged from directions that defied everything he knew about space travel. No hyperspace signatures. No energy trails. They simply materialized out of nothing, as if reality itself was opening doors for them. "Get me a count," he ordered. His voice was steady, but his claws dug into the metal railing of the command platform. "Admiral, we are tracking over 4,000 contacts and more are still arriving. Their vessels are. Admiral, their smallest ships are larger than our heavy cruisers. 4,000 ships. His fleet numbered 3,000, and he had considered it overwhelming force. But size wasn't what worried him most. It was the way they had appeared. The technology behind such travel was beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. "Open a channel to the human fleet," Thev commanded. "Demand they identify themselves and explain this violation of territorial space." His communications officer worked frantically at his console. "Admiral, they're not responding to standard hailing frequencies. They're broadcasting on a channel we've never seen before. I'm trying to translate." The main view screen flickered. A human face appeared. Female, middle-aged, gray hair pulled back severely. She wore a uniform that Thvek didn't recognize, all black with silver markings. Her eyes were the color of ice. "Admiral Thvek of the Keth Dominion," she said. Her voice was calm, almost pleasant. "I am Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Confederacy Deep Space Command. You were warned to withdraw. You chose to stay. Now you will learn why that was a mistake. You dare threaten me?" Thvek snarled. "I have 3,000 warships. I have conquered species far more powerful than yours. You have conquered species that fought the way you expected them to fight." Admiral Chen replied, "We are not those species. We have been watching your dominion for a very long time. We have studied your tactics, your technology, your psychology. We know exactly how you think, Admiral, and we have prepared accordingly. This is a bluff. Your technology cannot possibly be as advanced as you claim. No species develops faster than light travel beyond standard hyperspace. It's impossible." Admiral Chen smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Admiral, humanity discovered faster than light travel 200 years before we made first contact with the galactic community. We spent those 2 centuries watching, learning, and building. What you see now is what we built. The ships we showed the galaxy were toys we made to fit in. These are the real ones." Thvek felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Fear. "You will surrender your fleet immediately," Admiral Chen continued. "Power down your weapons and engines. Prepare to be boarded. Any ship that resists will be disabled. This is not a negotiation. And if I refuse, then we will demonstrate why refusing is unwise. You have 5 minutes." The screen went dark. The Vex bridge crew looked at him with terror in their eyes. They had followed him through a dozen wars. They had never seen him hesitate. He couldn't hesitate now. "All ships, battle formation," he ordered. "Prepare to engage the enemy. They may have numbers, but we have the fighting spirit of the Dominion. We do not surrender." His fleet responded with the discipline he expected. 3,000 ships formed into their standard attack pattern, a massive wedge designed to punch through enemy formations. It had worked against every opponent they had ever faced. The human fleet didn't form any pattern at all. They simply spread out, surrounding the Keth on all sides. It looked like chaos. It looked like they had no idea what they were doing. Thief gave the order to fire. 3,000 ships unleashed their weapons. Plasma bolts, kinetic rounds, and missile salvos streaked across space toward the human vessels. It was enough firepower to crack moons. The human ships didn't dodge. They didn't need to. Thvek watched in disbelief as his weapons fire simply stopped. Shields he had never seen before absorbed everything his fleet could throw at them. Not deflected. Absorbed? The energy simply vanished. "How is that possible?" His weapons officer whispered. "Our sensors show direct hits. The energy is gone." Before the Thek could respond, the humans returned fire. It was surgical. It was precise. It was terrifying. Beams of light touched each Keth ship exactly once. Not on the hull, on specific systems. Weapons arrays melted. Engine cores went dark. Communication systems went silent. Ship after ship lost the ability to fight, but not the ability to survive. The battle lasted 11 minutes. When it was over, 3,000 Keth warships drifted helplessly in space. Not one had been destroyed. Not one Keth soldier had died. They had simply been rendered completely powerless. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the view screen again. Admiral Thefk, your fleet has been neutralized. Your soldiers are unharmed. Your ships will be towed to a secure location where you will remain until the end of hostilities. If you cooperate, you will be treated with dignity. If you resist, we will simply disable your life support as well. I would prefer not to do that. Thevek sat in his command chair. His claws gripped the armrest so tightly that he left gouges in the metal. Everything he knew about war told him to fight to the death, to resist until the last breath. That was the Keth way, but there was nothing to fight with. His weapons were slag. His engines were dead. He couldn't even run. How? He managed to ask. How did you hide this from us? Our intelligence services have been monitoring your species for decades. You saw what we wanted you to see, Admiral Chen replied. We built small ships and flew them through normal hyperspace lanes. We established colonies on convenient worlds and traded goods at fair prices. We smiled and shook hands and made ourselves useful. And all the while, we built our real fleet in the darkness beyond the galactic rim, in places you never thought to look. Why? Why hide your strength? You could have conquered the galaxy. Admiral Chen's expression changed. For a moment, she looked almost sad. Because we've seen what Empire does to the conquerors, Admiral. We've lived that history. We chose not to repeat it. We wanted partners, not subjects. Neighbors, not slaves. But we knew that someday, someone would force us to reveal what we really are. We hoped it wouldn't happen. We prepared in case it did. She paused. The Keth could have been our friends. You chose to be our enemies. That choice has consequences. Thevek had no response. He watched as human ships began towing his helpless vessels toward a destination he couldn't guess. His fleet, his pride, his certain victory. All of it gone in minutes. At the same time, similar scenes played out across Keth territory. Not military bases, not population centers. Infrastructure. Shipyards that had built warships for centuries went dark as precision strikes disabled their power cores. Communication relays that connected the Dominion went silent. Supply depots that would have fed the war machine were captured by human ground forces who appeared out of nowhere, as if they could walk through walls. Still no Keth deaths. Every strike was calculated to neutralize without killing. The humans fought like surgeons, cutting out the disease while preserving the patient. On the Keth homeworld, High Command received reports from every front. All of them said the same thing. The humans had technology the galaxy had never seen. They had forces that dwarfed anything the intelligence services had predicted, and they were systematically dismantling the Dominion's ability to wage war without killing a single Keth citizen. This is impossible, High Commander Vethal growled. He was the supreme military authority of the Dominion, answerable only to the Emperor himself. Our fleet at New Helsinki outnumbered them 10-1. The reports indicate the opposite, High Commander. His aide replied carefully. The humans outnumbered our forces by more than a third. And their technology. I don't want to hear about their technology. Vethal swept the reports off his desk. I want to hear about how we're going to destroy them. High Commander, with respect, our military forces outside our home system have been completely neutralized. We have no ships capable of engaging the humans. We have no supply lines. We have no communication with our outer territories. Vethal slammed his fist on the desk. Then we use the prisoners. His aide went pale. High Commander, the humans we captured in the initial border skirmishes. Merchants, civilians. We execute them publicly. We show the galaxy that the Keth do not bow to threats. We force the humans to respond with emotion instead of strategy. High Commander, the humans have shown remarkable restraint. If we provoke them, they will show their true nature. Vethal's eyes burned with desperate hatred. Every species has a breaking point. Every species will become monsters if pushed hard enough. We will push them. We will make them reveal what they really are. And when they respond with atrocity, the galaxy will see that they are no different from any other conqueror. His aide said nothing. There was nothing to say. The executions were scheduled for the following day. In her quarters aboard the Human Command Station Remembrance, Ambassador Elena Vasquez received the news. She read the report twice. Then she bowed her head and wept. 347 human prisoners, merchants who had been trading legally in Keth space, tourists who had been visiting Keth worlds, scientists who had been attending conferences, ordinary people who had done nothing wrong except be human. They were going to die because the Keth hoped to make humanity angry enough to become monsters. Elena wiped her tears and straightened her shoulders. She had work to do. The galaxy was watching. What humanity did next would define them forever. She began preparing her address to the Galactic Council. The executions were broadcast across every communication network in the galaxy. The Keth wanted everyone to see. They wanted everyone to know what happened to those who defied the Dominion. 347 humans stood in a public square on the Keth homeworld. Their hands were bound. Their faces were bruised from beatings, but they stood straight. They did not beg. They did not cry. High Commander Vethal stood on a platform above them, addressing the cameras that would carry his words to every inhabited world. "These are the people the humans wish to protect," he declared. "These soft creatures who trembled when our soldiers touched them. The human confederacy has attacked our territory, disabled our ships, and violated our sovereignty. They claim to fight for peace. Let us see how peaceful they remain when they watch their people die." He gave the signal. The executions took 3 hours. The Keth soldiers used traditional methods. They wanted the deaths to be slow. They wanted the screams to carry. One by one, the humans died. A merchant from New Helsinki who had traded Keth spices for 20 years. A scientist from Earth who had come to study Keth architecture. A young couple on their honeymoon. Children. Elderly. It made no difference to the Keth. They killed them all. The last to die was an old man named Marcus Webb. He had lived among the Keth for 40 years, teaching human languages to their students. He had friends on this world, students who had become like family to him. As the soldier raised the blade, Marcus looked directly into the camera. "We forgive you," he said. "Humanity forgives you. Remember that." Then he was gone. The galaxy held its breath. Everyone knew what came next. The humans would respond with fire and blood. They would glass the Keth homeworld. They would kill millions in revenge. That was what any species would do. That was what the Keth were counting on. Ambassador Elena Vasquez appeared before the Galactic Council 1 hour after the last execution. Her eyes were red from crying. Her voice was hoarse, but she stood straight, just as her people had stood straight before their deaths. She spoke names. Marcus Webb, teacher, 73 years old. He spent his life building bridges between our peoples. Sarah and Thomas Kim, newlyweds, 26 and 28 years old. They saved for 5 years to afford their honeymoon trip. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, xenoarchaeologist, 41 years old. She discovered 3 ancient Keth artifacts that are now displayed in your Imperial Museum. She spoke every name. She told every story. It took her 2 hours. The council sat in silence, watching, waiting. When she finished, Elena raised her head. Tears still streamed down her face. But her voice was steady. "We could glass their worlds," she said. "We have the power. We could end the Keth species in an afternoon. Our ancestors would have. Our history is full of such vengeance. Blood for blood, pain for pain, fire for fire." She paused. The council leaned forward. "But we are not our ancestors. We will not become what we hate to defeat what we fear. The Keth wish to make us monsters. They will fail." She turned to address the cameras directly, knowing that billions were watching across the galaxy, knowing that the Keth leadership was watching, knowing that the families of the dead were watching. Human Command announces the following. The war against the Keth military will continue until unconditional surrender. Every warship will be disabled. Every weapons factory will be destroyed. Every soldier will be disarmed. The Keth will lose the ability to make war. This is not negotiable. Her voice hardened. But the war against the Keth people will never begin. We will not bomb their cities. We will not kill their children. We will not starve their populations. The distinction between their military and their civilians is absolute. We will never cross that line. Never. The council chambers erupted in murmurs. Some representatives looked confused, some looked skeptical. A few looked almost disappointed. They had expected fire and blood. They had expected revenge. High Commander Vethal hoped to make us reveal our true nature, Elena continued. He succeeded. This is our true nature. We are human. We fight when we must. We protect what we love. But we do not commit genocide. We do not murder innocents. We do not become the evil we are fighting. She stepped back from the platform. The 347 will be mourned. They will be remembered, and their deaths will not be avenged with innocent blood. That is our answer. That is who we are. On the Keth homeworld, High Commander Vethal watched the broadcast with growing rage. His plan had failed. The humans had not responded with atrocity. They had responded with grief and resolve and mercy. This was worse than he had imagined. They are lying, he insisted to his aides. This is propaganda. They will strike our cities soon enough. High Commander, they have had opportunities to strike civilian targets since the war began. They have not taken any of them. Then they are fools. Weakness is not virtue, but doubt had begun to spread through the Keth leadership. Some wondered if they had misjudged these humans. Some wondered if perhaps the executions had been a mistake. Some began to whisper that perhaps the High Commander's strategy was leading them toward disaster. In the weeks that followed, the human strategy became clear. They did exactly what Ambassador Vasquez had promised. Human forces continued their systematic dismantling of the Keth military. Shipyards fell. Weapons factories went dark. Military bases were captured by ground forces who appeared without warning and disabled defenders without killing them. But the civilian infrastructure was untouched. Power plants kept running. Food distribution continued. Hospitals remained open. The humans seemed almost obsessed with avoiding civilian casualties, even when it made their military operations more difficult. Something stranger began to happen on the occupied worlds. Human soldiers didn't behave like conquerors. They set up medical stations to treat wounded Keth citizens. They distributed food from captured military supplies to hungry populations. They protected Keth civilians from their own government's retreating forces, who had orders to destroy anything useful rather than let it fall into human hands. On the colony world of Keth Prime 7, a human captain named Maria Santos stopped her convoy when she saw Keth children searching through rubble for food. Her orders were to secure the military base, 2 kilometers north. Instead, she spent 3 hours helping the children find their families and setting up a feeding station. Her commanding officer asked why she had delayed the mission. Because those kids were hungry, Santos replied. That's reason enough. Stories like this spread through Keth space. At first, citizens dismissed them as human propaganda. Then too many witnesses came forward. Too many ordinary Keth told the same stories. The humans weren't lying. They really were treating conquered populations with kindness. Why? A Keth elder asked a human soldier who was repairing his damaged home. We killed your people. Why don't you hate us? The soldier, a young man barely out of training, thought about the question for a long moment. My grandmother survived something called the Holocaust, he said. Her whole family was killed because of what they were. She spent her life teaching us that hatred is a poison. It kills the hater as surely as the hated. She said the only way to honor the dead is to build a better world. So that's what I'm trying to do. The elder had no response. He had lived his whole life in a society that taught strength through domination. Mercy was weakness. Forgiveness was surrender. The idea that kindness could be strength was foreign to everything he knew. But as he watched the human soldier work, he began to wonder if perhaps the Keth had been wrong about many things. On the Keth homeworld, resistance to High Commander Vethal's leadership grew. The war was lost. Everyone knew it. The only question was how many more would die before the end. Vethal retreated to his command bunker, surrounded by loyalists who shared his hatred. He ordered scorched earth tactics. If the humans wanted the Dominion, they would inherit ashes. He commanded his forces to destroy everything valuable before retreating. But more and more Keth refused to obey. They had seen how the humans treated prisoners. They had heard the stories from occupied worlds. They began to believe that surrender might not mean slavery and death. Ambassador Vasquez sent a message directly to the Keth civilian government. It was simple. We want to end this war. We want to build peace. But we cannot do it alone. You have a choice. You can follow your military leaders into destruction, or you can choose a different path. The decision is yours. It was an invitation. It was a test. It was hope, offered to an enemy that had given humanity no reason to hope. The Keth would have to decide what kind of people they wanted to be. The revolution began not with weapons, but with whispers. On the Keth homeworld, citizens gathered in small groups to share what they had heard from the occupied territories. Stories of human soldiers sharing their own rations with hungry Keth children. Reports of human medics treating wounded Keth soldiers with the same care they gave their own. Images of human engineers rebuilding power stations that Keth military forces had destroyed during their retreat. It made no sense. Everything the Keth had been taught said that conquerors took what they wanted and crushed those who resisted. Mercy was weakness. Kindness was a trap. Yet the humans kept showing mercy, kept showing kindness, and they kept winning. They're trying to manipulate us. The government broadcasts insisted. This is psychological warfare. They want to soften us before the real brutality begins. But the weeks passed, and the brutality never came. Human forces continued their advance, and behind them they left not destruction but something that looked almost like peace. Captured Keth soldiers were held in camps that had libraries and recreation areas. Wounded prisoners received medical care. Families were allowed to communicate with captured relatives. Elder Thvena, who had served in the Keth Senate for 60 years, watched the broadcasts from occupied territory and felt his worldview crack. "I have seen 12 wars in my lifetime," he told his colleagues in a private meeting. In every one, the victors took slaves. They burned cities. They humiliated the defeated. The humans have done none of these things. Either they are the greatest liars in galactic history, or they are exactly what they claim to be. "You believe them?" Senator Kothra asked. "After what they did to our fleet, they disabled our fleet. They did not destroy it. They could have killed 3,000 ships worth of our people in the battle at New Helsinki. Instead, they left them alive. They fed them. They gave them medical care." Thvena shook his head slowly. "I do not understand it, but I cannot deny it." The Senate was divided. Half wanted to continue fighting, to hold out for better terms, to believe that somehow the Dominion could still emerge intact. The other half looked at the military situation and saw only one possible outcome. High Commander Vethal still controlled the military. He still had forces loyal to him. He still had weapons. And he was growing desperate. "The humans want our surrender," he broadcast to the remaining Keth forces. "They want us to bow like slaves. Are we Keth? Do we submit to alien invaders?" On a military base near the capital, young soldiers listened to their commander's words. They had joined the military believing they would protect their people. Instead, they had watched their government execute prisoners and order the destruction of their own cities. Lieutenant Vethara was the first to break ranks. She walked to her commanding officer and removed her rank insignia. "I will not follow orders that harm Keth civilians," she said. "The humans are not our enemy. Our own leaders have become our enemy." Her commanding officer reached for his weapon. Vethara was faster. Not to attack, but to speak. "Look at what we have become," she said. "We murder prisoners. We burn our own cities. We sacrifice our own people to satisfy our leaders' pride. The humans offer peace, and we answer with atrocity. Is this the Dominion you swore to serve?" Other soldiers stepped forward. Then more. Then more. The revolution spread like fire through dry grass. Military units across the homeworld refused orders from high command. Civilian populations poured into the streets, demanding an end to the war. Senators who had quietly opposed Vethal found their voices and called for his arrest. Vethal retreated to his fortified bunker with a small corps of loyalists. He still had weapons. He still had soldiers willing to die for him. He announced that he would never surrender, that he would destroy the capital city itself rather than allow the humans to claim victory. It was Ambassador Vasquez who made the next move. She transmitted a message directly to the Keth civilian government, bypassing military channels entirely. "We know about High Commander Vethal's plans. We know he intends to destroy your capital rather than accept defeat. We can stop him, but only if you invite us in. We will not invade your homeworld without permission. That choice belongs to your people, not to us." The Keth Senate debated for 3 hours. It was the most difficult decision in their civilization's history. To invite human forces to their homeworld was to admit final defeat. It was to trust an enemy they had tried to destroy. Elder Thvina cast the deciding vote. They have earned our trust, he said. Not with words, with actions. They could have become monsters. They chose to remain human. Now we must choose what the Keth will become. The invitation was sent. Human forces entered Keth space not as conquerors but as guests. The operation to capture Vethal lasted less than an hour. Human special forces breached his bunker using technology the Keth had never seen. They disabled his guards without killing them. They found the High Commander in his command center, preparing to trigger the bombs he had planted throughout the capital. He looked up at the human soldiers surrounding him with hatred burning in his eyes. So this is how it ends, he spat. Betrayed by my own people. Captured by soft creatures who don't have the courage to kill their enemies. The human commander, a woman named Colonel Sarah Torres, looked at him with something that might have been pity. High Commander Vethal, you are under arrest for war crimes, including the murder of 347 human prisoners. You will be transported to a secure facility, where you will await trial. Trial? Vethal laughed bitterly. You mean execution. At least have the honesty to admit what you're going to do. You will face trial, Torres repeated. A real trial, with evidence and defense and judgment. And the verdict will be rendered not by humans, but by your own people. They will decide what justice means for the Keth. Vethal's laughter died. He had expected vengeance. He had expected to become a martyr. Instead, the humans were giving him to his own people, to the citizens he had ordered to burn their own cities, to the families of soldiers he had sent to die for his pride. Why? He asked. The single word held decades of confusion. Torres looked at him for a long moment before answering. Because justice isn't about revenge. It's about truth. Your people need to hear the truth about what you did, and they need to decide how to respond. That's not our decision to make. It's theirs. Vethal was led away in restraints. Behind him, his bunker was secured. The bombs were disarmed. The capital city continued to exist. On every screen across the Keth homeworld, citizens watched as their high commander was captured, without a single shot fired. They watched as human soldiers treated Keth wounded and helped terrified civilians out of danger zones. They watched as Ambassador Vasquez addressed the Senate directly, speaking of peace and reconstruction and a future that didn't involve war. We came here because you invited us, she said. We will leave when you ask us to. We are not conquerors. We are not occupiers. We are neighbors who want to help you build something better than what you had before. How can you say that? Senator Kothra demanded. We killed your people. We executed them in public squares. How can you stand there and talk about neighbors? Vasquez's eyes glistened, but her voice remained steady. Because those people we lost would not want their deaths to be repaid with more death. Because we refuse to let hatred define us. Because the only way forward is together. She paused. The war is over. What comes next is up to you. But whatever you decide, we will not become your enemies again unless you force us to be. That is our promise. The Senate chamber was silent. Centuries of Keth military tradition, of domination and conquest, of believing that strength meant cruelty, lay shattered on the floor. Elder Thvena rose slowly to his feet. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the chamber. I have lived my whole life believing certain things about power and weakness. Today I learned that I was wrong about all of them. The humans have shown us what true strength looks like. It is not found in weapons or fleets. It is found in the courage to choose mercy when vengeance is justified. It is found in the wisdom to build rather than destroy. He turned to face the cameras broadcasting to every corner of Keth space. The Dominion of Keth accepts the terms of surrender offered by the Human Confederacy. The war is over, and may the spirits of both our peoples help us build something better from the ashes of what we have lost. Outside the Senate building, Keth citizens gathered in silence. Many of them had lost family in the war. Many of them had believed the propaganda about human monsters. Now they watched as human soldiers distributed food and medical supplies, as human engineers began assessing damaged infrastructure, as their enemy became their helper. A young Keth girl, barely old enough to understand what war meant, approached a human medic who was treating wounded civilians. Are you going to hurt us? She asked. The medic, a young man with kind eyes, knelt down to her level. No, little one. We're here to help. That's all. Just to help. The girl studied his face for a long moment. Then she reached out and took his hand. It was a small gesture. But across the galaxy, billions watched as a child of the enemy chose trust over fear. It was the first step toward something that might, in time, become peace. 6 months passed. The galaxy watched as something impossible took shape. On the Keth homeworld, reconstruction proceeded faster than anyone had predicted. Human engineers worked alongside Keth workers to rebuild damaged infrastructure. Human teachers opened schools to share knowledge freely. Human doctors trained Keth medical staff in techniques that had never existed outside human space. It wasn't occupation. It was partnership. And it confused every other species in the galaxy. The Galactic Council convened a special session to discuss what they called the human question. Representatives from 400 species gathered to debate what the Keth War meant for the future of interstellar civilization. Ambassador Vasquez sat quietly in the human delegation section, listening as species after species rose to speak. The humans have demonstrated capabilities far beyond what they revealed during their first century of contact, the Velith representative declared. They have technology that makes our own look primitive, ships that can travel through methods we don't understand, weapons that can disable entire fleets without causing casualties. If they can hide this much power, what else are they hiding? How can we trust them? They could have destroyed the Keth completely, the Morthani delegate countered. They chose not to. They could have taken revenge for the executions. They chose mercy. Their actions speak louder than our fears. Actions can be masks, the Zahari representative argued. Today they show kindness. Tomorrow they may show conquest. No species develops this level of technology without the desire to dominate. Vasquez listened to argument after argument. Fear versus hope. Suspicion versus gratitude. The same debates that humanity had wrestled with for centuries, playing out on a galactic stage. When it was finally her turn to speak, she walked slowly to the central platform. The chamber fell silent. Every eye watched her. "You want to know why we hid our strength," she said. "You want to know why we didn't conquer the galaxy when we had the chance. You want to know if you can trust us." She paused, letting the questions hang in the air. "Let me tell you a story. 300 years ago, humanity was destroying itself. We had weapons that could have ended our species. We had hatred that burned between nations and peoples. We came within hours of extinction more than once. Our planet was scarred. Our populations were traumatized. We stood at the edge of an abyss and looked down into oblivion. The council listened in silence. Then we discovered faster than light travel. And suddenly, the universe was open to us. We could have expanded like a plague, taking world after world, species after species. We had the technology. We had the resources. We had plenty of people who wanted exactly that." She shook her head slowly, but others among us remembered what empire had cost us on our own world. They remembered the wars, the genocides, the countless dead. They argued that we had a chance to be something different, to learn from our history instead of repeating it, to build relationships instead of empires. So we chose to hide, not out of weakness but out of wisdom. We watched the galaxy for 2 centuries. We saw species like the Keth conquer and dominate. We saw the cycle of war and revenge repeat itself again and again. And we prepared for the day when we might have to break that cycle. Vasquez looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from species who had fought humans, traded with humans, feared humans. The Keth forced us to reveal ourselves. They declared war, expecting easy victory. They executed our prisoners, expecting us to respond with atrocity. At every step, they expected us to be what they were: conquerors, monsters, masters. Her voice hardened. They were wrong, and now they are learning what we have always known. True strength is not measured by the ability to destroy. It is measured by the ability to build, to heal, to forgive, to choose mercy when vengeance is justified. She stepped back from the central platform. "You ask if you can trust us. I cannot prove our intentions with words. I can only point to our actions. We had the power to enslave the Keth. We chose to help them rebuild. We had the power to dominate the galaxy. We chose to be neighbors instead of masters. We had every reason to become monsters. We chose to remain human. Make of that what you will." The council debated for 3 more days. In the end, they reached a decision that would have seemed impossible a year before. The humans would not be restricted or contained. Instead, they would be invited to lead a new initiative, a galactic defense collective, designed to protect member species from aggression while respecting their independence. Human technology would be shared gradually, with safeguards to prevent misuse. Human advisors would work with any species that requested help with reconstruction or development. It was not perfect. Some species refused to participate, still too afraid of human power to accept human partnership. Some demanded more concessions, more proof of human intentions. The debates continued for months, but something had changed. The HFY War had broken the old assumptions about how powerful species behaved. It had shown that mercy was not weakness. It had proven that conquerors could choose a different path. On New Helsinki, the first permanent memorial to the 347 was unveiled. Ambassador Vasquez stood before the monument, looking at the names carved in stone. Marcus Webb, Sarah and Thomas Kim, Dr. Yuki Tanaka. All of them. Every name, every story. Beside the human memorial, a second monument had been built. It was smaller, made of HFY crystal that glowed with inner light. The inscription was in both human and HFY languages. They could have destroyed us. They chose to save us instead. Elder Thvena had come from the HFY homeworld for the ceremony. He stood next to Vasquez, looking at the monuments with eyes that held centuries of regret. I still do not fully understand, he admitted. Your people died because of our hatred. How can you stand next to me without anger? Vasquez thought for a long moment before answering. Because anger is easy. Healing is hard. And we've learned that the hard path is usually the right one. She turned to face him. Your people didn't kill mine. Your leaders did. And your people rose up to stop them when they saw the truth. That matters. That's where hope lives. Thvena bowed his head. We have much to learn from you. And we from you. That's what neighbors do. They learn from each other. They help each other. They build something together that neither could build alone. Across the plaza, a group of children played together. Some were human, some were HFY. They had grown up during the war, learning to fear each other. Now they chased each other around the fountains, laughing at games that needed no common language. A human girl fell and scraped her knee. A HFY boy helped her up and offered her a piece of fruit from his lunch. She smiled and shared half of her sandwich in return. Admiral Chen, who had commanded the human fleet that day at New Helsinki, watched the children from a bench nearby. She had spent her life preparing for war, building ships, training soldiers, planning battles. She had always believed that force was the only language the universe understood. Now she watched a human child and a HFY child share their lunch, and she realized that she had been wrong. Was it worth it? A voice asked. She looked up to find Colonel Torres settling onto the bench beside her. Was what worth it? All of it. The centuries of hiding. The years of preparation. The war itself. The 347. We couldn't save. Chen watched the children play for a long moment. Ask me again in 50 years. When those children are grown. When they have children of their own. When the stories of this war are history instead of memory. She paused. If they build the future we fought for, then yes, it will have been worth everything. Torres nodded slowly. And if they don't, then we'll keep fighting. Not with weapons, with choices, with mercy, with the stubborn belief that people can be better than their worst impulses. Chen smiled slightly. That's the human way. We keep trying, even when it's hard. Even when we fail, we keep trying. The sun set over New Helsinki, painting the sky in shades of gold and red. The monuments cast long shadows across the plaza. The children eventually stopped playing and were called home by their parents. But something remained. A promise. A possibility. A future that wasn't guaranteed but could be built, one choice at a time. Humanity had shown the galaxy what it really was. Not conquerors. Not monsters. Not masters. Just people. Flawed and stubborn and endlessly hopeful. Capable of terrible things, but also capable of choosing something better. They had declared war on hatred itself, and they intended to win.